This conference will now be recorded.
That won't be required, Manisha. We always get students who has worked with HL7, previous standard where XML and JSON was not, part of those specification. So
Right.
what I do usually is that I usually covered, basic concepts of XML, JSON. I know that helps the students to get along. So by the end of the session, you will already have some, experience, some hands-on on both XML and both JSON. So it doesn't require much of your effort outside this session to learn JSON or XML.
All right, sounds wonderful. Actually, also there was a personal request that if we could have a little bit extra classes, obviously, as basis the course fees, it could be expanded. The course fees could be expanded, and I could pick up a little more on JSON and XML because that will require some effort from your side also. So if we could have at least 3-4 extra sessions on that.
Definitely, Manisha will cover that as a part of this course. I'll customize that this course in need of you,
Nice.
whatever wherever you feel this particular aspect we should dive into more. We'll definitely have separate sessions on that so that you can have quite good knowledge around all the concepts.
Really appreciate. And my another question, I mean, for now was that I'm not sure, and I think we can touch base on this later, that you must be looking at certain sessions per month. And given my schedule, I wanted to go a bit slow. I'm actually happy going a bit slow. And, if this is a 1 month course, then maybe covering it in 4 months, because I might just go as slow as that. I mean, I'll obviously need to understand what is the requirement of, I mean, how many classes are we planning per week? But personally, because of a little paucity of time, my request would be going a bit slow.
So usually the course is structured 5 days a week, and it usually go around 30 hours. So around 1 month or more than 1 month, maybe average 1 month. It usually goes if if we are covering sessions 5 days a week. But as I understand, we usually deal with students who are coming from a working background, and it's not always possible to catch up on each and every session. So we are open to that, and let's see what we can make up in the best possible way, best comfortable way for both of us. So we'll be open to that and see how it goes then.
Sure, sure. We'll sync up on this then post the demo session. Sure. All right. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, so we'll start. I have already given a quick introduction about myself, so I'll just move to the details of demo session. This is a message from my side. Whenever a new student on boards, I usually give an overview of the course. So this course is targets both practical hands-on training with the fire, and as well as it also covers the aspects which helps a student prepare for the fire proficiency certificate examination. And it
Sure.
covers the concepts from the basics to the advanced level, such as profiling, slicing. These might be new words too as of now, but at the end of the session you will be quite familiar with these things. So no worries on that part. Regarding the duration of the course, as I mentioned, it would be a 30 hours online course covering all the fundamentals as well as advanced concepts. And this is not 30 hours. It sometimes goes plus minus, depends on how long or how deep we are into question and answer sessions, or if any special requirement is there, then we manage based on that.
Sure.
And yes, this is a live webinar training, and for hands-on, there would be few assignments as well that helps you to nourish your mind, to condition your mind to think in the direction how to use fire standard and specification for your own scenarios that you're looking for. And
Yeah.
yes, apart from regular sessions where I'll be covering concepts from fire, there would be few sessions dedicated to Q&A. So after every 3 to 4 sessions, or whenever we feel like we have covered a good amount of content and we need Q&A sessions, or we need to review what we have done so far. So we will have such sessions as well. In those sessions will be dedicated mostly on Q&A, or any doubts you have, or anything that I want to bring up that we have not covered as a part of previous sessions. So we'll cover that in those sessions.
Sounds wonderful.
And and at the end of this course there would be a mock test. So this mock test is in the same format, in the same it's a replica of, I would say, the fire certificate exam. It will have the same kind of questions in the same format, objective questions, and this is usually planned after 3 weeks from the end of this course. I usually believe 3 weeks is quite good enough time after going through the course, and one can go through the entire content and be ready for the mock test. But again, based on the availability and based on the willingness of the student, that can be adjusted. But I usually suggest let's go for 3 weeks and be stick to that particular timeline.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah. And there are a few expectations that I have from the student. The first expectation is to attend all the sessions, since this would be a one-on-one session. So there would be no session if you are not there or I am not there. So we don't have to worry about that. And yes, complete all assignments. This will help you to do a hands-on, to go through the FHIR website on your own and read the specification, interpret it as per your scenario. So this will help you in that direction. And as I mentioned, 5 to 5 hours, 5 days a week usually that we plan. But overall, we require students to invest around 6 to 10 hours per week. So the extra hours that would be requiring from the student will be on the assignment that that I'll be giving. The assignment will not take much of your time, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. That's what I usually keep it. I don't want to be more complex, and that student is investing more time. The most of the learning we will do in the sessions itself.
Sure.
And the one thing that we always keep in mind when we are training about FHIR is that most of the audiences are new to FHIR. So we always begin from the basics, and that's how the pace of the course would be. We'll take the course with ease, with comfortability, and wherever possible we'll address the questions and any queries that we have.
Sure. All right.
Yep. And ask questions wherever you feel like. That is another thing.
Sure.
Yeah. This is the course schedule that we have. So I have divided the course into different sessions for us to guide through the FHIR course, so that we'll end up covering each and every important aspects of FHIR. So this is the first session that we are going through, onboarding and welcome to the course. So usually in this session I explain about the overview of the course. Then the first session would be on introduction to FHIR. We might cover some contents from this session today itself, so that you can have a quick overview around FHIR and what FHIR is about. And then the further sessions would cover will go into the details of FHIR concepts. So resource is one of the major component of FHIR. So you might not be able to relate as of now what resources, but as we move along, it will all make sense to you. So I'll not bother you with the titles of all the sessions. Since you're new to FHIR, you might not relate, but
Right.
this is how the sessions are divided. And once you approve, we can define the dates, which session will fall on which dates, and if any assignment is there, then what would be the starting of that assignment and what would be the end date of that assignment. We can fill it up, and we can have it for our reference to track the course.
Sure.
Yeah. So as I said, we'll have we will cover a few contents from the session 1, introduction to FHIR, and see an overview or background of FHIR. So usually this session requires 2 different days because of the content it has. So today we cover around what is FHIR, why FHIR came to the market, and what is the scope of FHIR, what we can do with the FHIR, and why FHIR is better in comparison to its previous specification, which is HL7, V2, and V3. And we'll see if we have time, then we can also navigate through the FHIR website as well as a part of this session.
All right.
So why FHIR? Let's see how FHIR came into the minds of the implementers or HL7 board members. So HL7 is the organization which decides or provides specification for healthcare interoperability standards. So it has HL7 V2, it has HL7 V3, and CDA. These were the 3 previous healthcare standards it has released. And what goes into the mind of HL7 task force? Let's see that. So it started in 2011 when the discussion started. If HL7 was starting afresh, then what would be the interoperability standards look alike? and there were few pointers that the discussion or the people came up with. They started comparing the previous standards. For example, HL7 V2 was successful. It is quite acceptable into the market, but the technology was old. It is not compatible with the new technology, as you mentioned about XML, JSON, or web-based technologies. It is not compatible with the mobile-based applications that we see these days in other sectors as well as in the healthcare sectors as well. And then there is another specification, version 3. So version 3 was the major objective behind version 3 was to support as much fields as possible, but the drawback with that is that the specification become bulky, and that was something that implementers were not happy with. It was hard to implement such a bulky specification, so that's why it was rejected. Then CDA was the standard that was dedicated to do a document exchange. If document exchange is a new term to you, then you can see document exchange as something that whenever a patient migrates or move from one hospital to another, so the whole report.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sure. I understand the CDA, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the whole report that he carries from one hospital to another, that you can relate to document exchange, that thing. Yeah, and yes, HL7, since HL7 was a separate standard, it was not in sync with formats that are in other sectors other than healthcare. So any tooling that would be required has to be done specifically for HL7, and implementers were not able to use the common tools that are available on the web with respect to healthcare domain. And as we know how mobile applications are ruling the market, with previous standards it was not possible to design or develop healthcare applications, healthcare mobile applications. So that was one of the drawback from there. And as everything is moving to cloud, REST based structures are important to be supported, and this was not the case in the HL7 previous specifications.
In fact, can I chime in, and I could ask question here, Kumar, if it's okay?
Yes,
yeah.
please.
So yeah, what I was intrigued, actually, I was when I read generally about FHIR, so they say that FHIR combines CDA, the best parts of CDA, the best parts of version 3, and is better plug and play than version 2. Because I've worked with version 2, and yes, this because of so much of optionality in the version 2, and there is a lot of custom implementation. So I do understand that it's not completely plug and play, that you can't really vouch for the plug and play part in version 2. So I wanted to understand in a little more details. I understand all these differences, but still it's not, I don't understand the why of these differences.
Okay.
Differences,
Yeah, the first statement that you have mentioned is that FHIR combines all the benefits of previous standards. So let's understand what are those benefits that FHIR has it. For example, as you mentioned, HL7 V2 has more of the fields as optional. It can be extensible. So same goes with the FHIR as well. FHIR has maintained that feature. Most of the elements in FHIR are optional. It's not mandatory. And the second thing is, yes, each and every element in FHIR is extensible. So that how the benefits of HL7 V2 is covered here. Then the benefits of HL7 V3. So the intention behind version V3 was to support as many elements as possible, so that maximum variation of data can be supported. So with FHIR, if you see, once we are learning about FHIR, so how FHIR has addressed is that with surveys or with discussion with different regions, with different implementers, the intention behind FHIR is to go behind the 20/80 rule. But what we mean by that is that will support 20% of the data elements which can fulfill the 80% of the needs at global level for the healthcare. So that's how FHIR has maintained the specification not to go bulky.
I lost a little track here. Sorry, can you repeat the 2080 bit, the rule? That
So the yes, the 2080 rule is that while releasing this specification or writing this specification, what implementers gets keep in mind is that we will support the 20% of the data elements so that 80% of the requirements can be fulfilled. So we don't have to support all the elements to support the 100%. The intention is that with the surveys, with the feedbacks from the implementers, 20% of those elements would be supported, which can fulfill the need of 80% of the requirements of the healthcare domain.
it sounds very interesting. If you don't mind, Kumar, can please provide one example of this?
Yes. For example, it doesn't matter whether you are in US, whether you are in India. Few data for a patient would be always will be required. For example, identifier. For example, name. For example, gender. For example, address. So these are the few things that will always be required throughout the globe. Doesn't matter where you are. So these is the 20%, and whatever rest is remaining, such as race. Race is quite common in US. Then caste is quite common in India. So these differences FHIR has left to be addressed as extension, as you mentioned in the HL7V2, but it has covered most of the data elements that can address 80% of the requirement throughout the globe for healthcare.
Sounds great. Sounds all right. Sounds really nice. Yeah. And how does it take the CDA part into account
Yes.
and integrate that?
Yeah, so CDA was specifically designed to do a document exchange, and it was not fit for to serve any other scenarios in healthcare. What REST has done, REST has provided a separate mechanism, separate components through which this particular scenario of document exchange can be possible. And yes, rest of the scenarios like surveys, holding genetic data, or data analytics, any other scenarios, maybe appointment, maybe the whole process of going through surgeries and all those can also be addressed through FHIR.
Perfect. And this is very interesting. No, thank you so much. In fact, there's only one thing. The plug and play part of that is that the 2080 implementation that we're talking about, that addresses the plug and play, because the 20% becomes a must have. Is that the how does FHIR become more plug and play than version 2? I was just trying to understand that.
So the plug and play, by plug and play we means that is supported by REST. So do you have any background with the REST or HTTP?
Not really. It comes more on a technical side, though I understand. But yeah, if you could explain from your side.
Yes. So no worries on that. No worries on that. We'll also cover the REST or HTTP as a part of this course to understand how this REST-based architecture is.
Sure.
So think of it is this way. If you have worked with HL7V2, so when you publish a HL7 message into a particular server, to retrieve that particular resource, to retrieve that particular data, you have to have a specific integration engine or specific software. But with FHIR, that is not the case. With FHIR, if you have published something into a database will assign one URL to you. It's totally web URL, like we open Facebook, like we open Google. Similarly, every resource, every resource will be assigned a unique URL to that, and you can use that URL. It doesn't matter which application you are using. You can use that URL and do a query from that particular application and fetch that resource. So that's how it is plug and play. So once you have that URL, you can hit on the Chrome as well, and you can get the resource.
Interesting. No, I get it on a very high level, but I think once I understand REST and JSON and XML and all that, so I think I'll be able to relate to that better. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
so while doing hands-on, we'll go through it, and I guess you will be able to relate more with this.
Sure. No, thank you so much. That sounds really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so based on these, conclusions or the pointers, there is a person called Graham Greene, which we call as the father of fire, has come up with this fire specification. Um, let's move ahead. Yeah. So once we know the background or the drawbacks from previous specification, there is a particular goals that has to that are being set for fire. Let's see what are those goals that are being set for fire. The first rule is that it should be easy to develop. So by easy to develop, we mean whenever if you want to add something to this specification, it shouldn't be a headache. It can be easily developed, and the fire specification can be extended. That's what it means. And the learning curve should be shallow, and with minimal tooling requirements, one can produce more number of resources or more artifacts with respect to fire. It should be easy to implement. Uh, the once you learn the fire, it should be easy to implement as well. It shouldn't be a headache to you. That what the intention was. And it should be backward compatible with the previous specification, since most of our legacy devices, healthcare devices, will have implementation of HL7 V2 or V3. So it won't be possible to have a fresh set of devices that only support fire. So the fire has maintained that thing, that it should be backward compatible. HL7 V2, HL7 V3 can be converted into fire easily, and fire can be converted back to previous versions easily.
Sure.
Yeah. And it should be implementer friendly. By implementer friendly means implementers doesn't have to design or develop their own tool to support healthcare or to support fire. All any common tools that are available on the web can be used while working with specification with HL7. So that will save a lot of time for implementers and focus on the clinical workflows. And at the same time, since we are dealing with healthcare domain, there would be roles which are not much technical, such as doctors, such as nurses. These guys will not have much of the technical understanding. So fire has kept that in mind, and apart from giving the specification in XML and JSON format, it has also maintained a human readable version of it. So once you open the website, you can easily read it as a document and you can understand it. It doesn't require any technical knowledge to understand those things.
Sure.
And yes, and the other intention that I have covered earlier was as well, that fire is intended to integrate with the latest technologies such as HTTP, XML, JSON. Then only the healthcare domain will be in sync with the the latest technologies that are showing up in the market, such as mobile applications or cloud applications.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. And let's see how fire achieve its goals, how fire achieve these goals. So the first thing, the fire specification is hosted on the web and is fully hyperlinked. By this we meant that once you open the fire page, every information is provided with hyperlinks. If you are curious about any one topic, you can open that and read about it. That was not the case with the HL7 V2 or previous specification. In the previous specification, you have to download the whole specification in the PDF format, and you have to struggle through the document to figure out your the topic of interest. But with fire, that is not the case. You can directly navigate from one link to another and learn about any particular topic that you're interested in.
Right.
And as I mentioned, apart from XML or JSON definition, it has also maintained an easy to read format, so that that is helpful to clinicians or anyone who doesn't have any technical background.
Right.
And also a numerous of examples are given on the fire website. For example, we talk about patient, so how a patient resource is being used in different scenarios, such as newborn, such as a maternal a pregnant patient, or any cancer patient. So those kind of examples are already mentioned on the website, so one can always refer those examples and get inspiration or references from those to address their interested scenarios.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah. And currently fire supports around 145 resources, but in case, let's suppose a new requirement comes into picture, and there is one more resource that needs to be supported. So for those scenarios, there is a particular development build process that has been assigned. So any new member of HL7 can easily learn those process and can develop, a new resource based on those guidelines. So it is easy to extend, I would say, the FHIR specification.
Great.
And we talked about common tools. As you mentioned, with HL7 V2 it was not possible to use common tools. So what FHIR has done, FHIR has developed the implementations in different languages such as Delphi, Java, .NET, and C. Any implementation engineer, if interested, can directly use these libraries and can use these to implement FHIR rather than designing from the scratch.
Then I guess it would become pretty easy if we are saying that 20% of it, the more global scenarios are anyways implemented, and then they're translated into the actual implementation also. So I'm assuming it's a very quick to kind of implement guideline in real life projects, right?
Yes. Yeah. So even if you go through the full form of FHIR, it starts with fast healthcare. So the reason it is called fast, because it is quite faster to implement compared to previous specification.
Oh, right. And these
And
free available implementations are there on the FHIR site itself? The
yes.
Alliance.
So there would be references on FHIR website, and you can navigate to those and have these implementation and can directly start using them.
Beautiful. All right. Got it.
Yeah. And apart from these, there are many publicly available FHIR test servers. So for example, either you are an implementer who is learning FHIR or just a student curious about FHIR, you can test or learn using these publicly available FHIR test servers. So these are nothing but the databases which are built using the FHIR specification. So we'll see few of the FHIR servers throughout the course. And we'll do practice, we'll do a get, we'll do update, and all those interactions with these open servers.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing that has kept in mind is that the regular feedbacks should be there from the implementers and from the real fields. So for that, connectathons are there. Yeah, so the connectathons are there. So if you have developed any a product of your own and want to get it tested, you can bring it to the connectathons, have the FHIR experts and the audience test your product and get the feedbacks. So regular connectathons has been conducted, and that's always in the plan. And apart from that, since it's not always possible to be in person, there are various communication channels are there where implementers are in touch, and you can always post your questions, get the feedbacks, and if you are willing, you can also help other implementers solve their issues.
Sure. Got it.
Yeah.
No, this is very interesting. Right.
Yeah. And yes, as I mentioned, the full form of FHIR is Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. It is called fast because it is faster to implement as compared to previous specifications, and the resource word is there because resources are the building blocks of FHIR. You can compare resources to the segment in HL7 V2, but it's not exactly the segments. But yes, if you want to relate to it, then you can relate to the segments.
All right. Okay. I think we're going to go in anyways the details of resources, I assume, in the course.
Yes. Yeah. And we have covered this part. FHIR combines the best features of HL7 V2 V3 and CDA, and it also leverages the latest web standards such as XML, JSON, and REST. Then FHIR is based on modular components called resources. Again, we'll cover into detail what resources are and what we can achieve through FHIR through resources. And these resources can be used independently. For example, you can store a record of a patient independently, or you can combine with other records such as this particular patient has been treated by this particular doctor and in this particular hospital. So it can be stored independently, or it can be, as the resources can be linked with each other, and complex scenarios of clinical and administrative workflows can be achieved.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with FHIR, it is possible to build healthcare application on mobile phones and cloud communications, and even from some small scale healthcare providers to large scale healthcare providers. We can use FHIR for the support of healthcare interoperability.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And coming around about the FHIR releases, so far FHIR has released 4 versions. R4 is the latest one, and it is considered more stable, and this is the one that is mostly used in the market. These first were on the trial basis, and once there was some confidence on the FHIR, then STU3 was released. STU3 have some stable components as well as unstable components. R4 is where where most of the components are seen as normative. Normative means stable, so that's why are most popular in the market. So coming to scope, what we can achieve through FHIR we can achieve all aspects of healthcare, such as clinical care, administration, research, surveys, or data analytics. All these can be achieved through a FHIR. And how FHIR allows the information exchange is using these different architectures. So we'll see these in details once we dive into the course, but for the sake of mentioning it, or the knowledge, I have mentioned it here. We will work a lot with REST throughout the course, because this is where the plug and play thing comes into picture, and it is also easy to use compared to all of these architectures. Plus REST is something that is most popular and most favorite one among the implementers.
Right. So there is, within FHIR we have messaging, document, services. Okay. I think once we get into the details of it, so I think, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So documents will cover the aspects of document exchange. Messaging would be similar to the way HTTP and V2 messages are exchanged, and REST is something that is specific to FHIR that we will learn. Then databases, if there are any specification or guidelines given by FHIR for the databases, so we'll cover that as well.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yep. So we'll stop here for the introduction perspective, and I'll just navigate a little bit on FHIR website, so to give you a quick overview, how does it look like. So before that, have you ever gone to the FHIR website before this?
I guess yes. I mean, just for the sake of curiosity, but I didn't explore as much. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the the page that I usually start with, because it has mentioned all the previous versions. If you see DSTU2, STU3, but you might not be interested in all the previous versions. What you would be interested in the the latest version. So whatever you see on the top is the latest published version, and this is the current version. So by current version, we mean that the FHIR task force is still working on this, and keep on updating this particular branch or this particular specification. So you will always see changes every time on this specification. So always prefer something that is already published, so that you will see on the top of it.
All right, so that's the 4.1, which is...
Yeah, so you will see here, release 4 here.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the home page for release 4, and for other versions as well, the home page would be similar. And FHIR has given introduction based on your role. If you're a developer, you can navigate to this particular link and get an introduction from the developer's perspective. Similarly, how the introduction would be from clinical perspective, and if you're an architect, how it will look like from an architect architecture perspective. That's we can navigate and have a look at it, but we'll not have a look at now. What my intention behind opening the FHIR website is that what kind of information are usually available on FHIR.
Right, this is a very thought through standard, and
yes.
Now with this availability, now if we don't have the interoperability conformance within healthcare system, then surely the intent is an issue then. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And these levels that you see are the frameworks, how the FHIR is designed. So the base would be, XML, JSON, what are the different data types, what are the extension, and how the documentation, is built of FHIR. So, one can navigate and learn those. And then the level 2, using these, different groups are designed. So REST API, what is REST API, what are the different interactions are possible. So for now, you can see REST API as operations such as you can create a resource or create a record, you can fetch a record from the database, you can update a record, or you can delete a record. This is the basic thing, but once we get into the technical aspects, we'll see the various variations that are possible.
Right.
And how to search, what are the different criteria. You can search a particular resource such as patient, you can search by name, you can search by date of birth, you can search by combination of multiple components. So all those are defined here. And
Right.
few administration resources, for an hospital, these number of resources is patient, practitioner, organization, what are the devices in the hospital, and what is the care team in the hospital, where is the location of the hospital, and what are the different services that healthcare provider provides. So these comes under the administration resources. And from the workflow perspective, it has divided as these: clinical, diagnostic, then medication, and the workflow itself, appointment workflow or referral workflow, and the financial workflow of claiming an insurance or filing any billing thing that will covered by or supported by these resources. So we'll cover most of these resources as a part of this course, and we'll work with the most major ones that we usually see in the market.
Right.
Yeah. So apart from this, there is one more tab that I want you to introduce before we end this particular session. So these are the total number of resources that FHIR has supported, and it has been divided into the different sections, such as these are the foundation resources, this is the base resources, and how clinical workflows will be implemented. So these number of resources would be there. So different categories are there. So total, I guess, 145 resources are being supported. And if you don't want to navigate through the categories, then you can navigate through alphabetical order. So if you already know what a resource you want to work on, you can directly fetch it from here and read the specification and start working on that.
Sure.
So if we go further, it will confuse you, might intrigue various questions on your mind. So I'll stop it here, and once we know what resource is, what's the technical aspects of it, then we can cover all these things.
Yeah, sounds really interesting, in fact. And all right, this is very interesting. There's a lot of stuff that we've Kumar, you've covered and shared. I haven't made any notes of it, so I'm wondering that once we get started, I'm excited to get started as soon as possible. And so will you be sharing those notes or the audio, because there's a lot that you've explained actually on the audio. So on
Yes,
the
yeah, I understand that, and yes, these PPTs notes would be shared to you, and yes, recording will also be shared to you.
all right, great.
Yeah,
Great. I think I'm very, very excited to get started. It's just my pace is going to be an issue. If that's not an issue with you, I mean, it can be abysmally slow pace. But I mean, I'm looking at it from long term. I mean, I'm occupied with a lot of stuff on a personal, grounds also, with my child's health and everything. So, so I'm going to be occupied with that, but I didn't, I'd waited enough, so I thought I'd better get started. So, so from that standpoint, okay,
yeah,
yeah, go slow,
yeah.
right?
I understand that you mentioned in the starting you are looking around 4 months kind of. So if
It
this
seems
course is usually finished in 1 month, let's say, or maybe 1.5 months, how much you are expecting it to extend in your particular case?
4 to 5 months. I mean, it doesn't reflect on the, the way I'll pay up the fees. I mean, that I can, I can pay into installments if that works. I mean, one right now, half of it, and one in, kind of 15 days or a month, whatever ways it works. But, uh, but yeah, I mean, the pace, if it can be kind of 4, 5 months, I'm not sure. I'll try and ramp up as we go further. But at least to start with, I do not just want to cover the classes and then not be able to absorb and not be able to reflect it internally. So maybe we can go very slow, at least to start with, and then I'll try and pace up. Then, we can
Okay.
talk mutually because I understand you'd be very busy, Kumar. So we can sync up our time and everything.
I got that. I guess Srinivas is the right person to discuss on the duration as well as the how much it will cost. I guess he will get back to you on that front after this session.
Yeah, sure.
Srinivas,
Sounds
are you
good.
there?
Yeah.
Right? Srinivas,
So
are you there? I guess he is not around. I guess he will approach you once the session is ended on
I'll
this
be
front.
in touch with him and have the number. I assume that's his number only. So I'll be in touch with him. And it's been a
Okay.
pleasure. It's been a very helpful session, Kumar, and I look forward to it.
And definitely, and yeah, looking forward to meet you in further sessions, and we'll see you then.
Is this kind of timing suitable? I could kind of prepone it also. I could make it at 4 also, if 4 is more preferable.
Uh, 4 a little would be not possible for me. I won't be regular at that time, but 7 is something I can be regular.
All right. Get
Yeah.
it. No worries. I mean, I think anything after 2 p.m. up until 9 p.m. and as is, we're going to be doing once a week or so. That's going to be perfect then. And
Okay.
once we have a session, would it be possible to have it for 1.5 hours rather than just 1 hour?
Yes, definitely. It depends on the kind of topic we are covering. For some cases, it is required that a particular topic has to be finished in one particular session itself for better understanding. Then yes, we can go for 1.5 hour session. And in some cases, I feel like it's end of the session and a new topic shouldn't be triggered. Then we might have end up wind up the session 5 minutes or 10 minutes earlier. So we'll be flexible on the timing. That won't be an issue.
Sounds great. And would you want me to pick up something on JSON, XML, or REST and study a little bit myself? So I have, because otherwise it'll be quite some hand holding for you. I have no knowledge at all.
No, don't worry about that. I'll walk you through that. In the manner it has to be done. So you will be learning, and plus you will not be, bombarding yourself with the knowledge that you don't require. So keep it, leave it up to me how the session, needs to be driven. Don't worry, you will not miss a thing. You will learn, as much as possible from the session, both on the XML and JSON front.
Well, that's really, in fact, kind of you. And it's just that you'll have to treat me as a completely non-tech person. So I thought maybe it doesn't get difficult for you. So
Definitely, I got that. Yeah, and with Fire, usually we face that kind of students for whom XML and JSON are new technologies. So I'm quite used to that thing. So no worries on that part.
yeah, all right. No, thank you so much. That's it from my side, and I look forward to our next sessions, Kumar. Thanks a lot.
Okay,
And
thank you. Yeah, thank you, and see you again.
yeah, absolutely. I really look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye
If
bye.
it's not there, I'll touch base. So thank you.
Definitely, bye.
Bye. Right. Thank you.